It started like just another night in the WNBA, but within minutes, everything changed. A single sequence, a single decision, and suddenly the entire conversation around Caitlin Clark shifted again. Not because of hype, not because of headlines, but because of what actually happened on the court. And if you've been following closely, you already know, moments like this don't just disappear. They build narratives. They change perceptions. And they force people to take a second look. So what exactly happened this time? And why are fans, analysts, and even players reacting so strongly? Let's break it down, carefully, honestly, and based on what we actually know. To understand why this moment matters, you have to zoom out for a second. Caitlin Clark entered the WNBA with unprecedented attention. Her transition from college to the pros wasn't just about basketball, it became a cultural shift. Record-breaking viewership, sold-out arenas, and a level of media coverage that the league hasn't consistently seen before. But with that attention comes scrutiny. Every game, every possession, every decision is analyzed. And that's where things get interesting, because what we're seeing now isn't just about stats. It's about how a player adapts under pressure, how a team evolves, and how narratives are built in real time. In this particular situation, reports suggest that Clark delivered another standout performance, one that didn't just show scoring ability, but something more subtle: control, tempo, decision-making. And that's where the real story begins. According to recent discussions among analysts, what stood out wasn't just the points she put up, it was how she managed the game. There were stretches where she slowed things down, reading defenses instead of forcing plays. Then, almost instantly, she would accelerate the pace, creating opportunities that weren't there just seconds before. That kind of shift is not accidental. It's a sign of adjustment. Early in the season, critics pointed out turnovers, physical defense, and the difficulty of adapting to WNBA's speed. And to be fair, those were real concerns. The league is faster, stronger, and more disciplined defensively than college basketball. But moments like this suggest something important. She's learning. And not just learning, applying. There were sequences where defenders tried to pressure her high on the court. Instead of forcing risky passes, she reset the offense. In other moments, when defenders backed off, she confidently took perimeter shots. Fans are reacting strongly to this because it challenges the earlier narrative. The conversation is shifting from, "Can she adjust?" to, "How quickly is she improving?" And that's a big difference. Of course, no performance exists in isolation. Basketball is a team game, and context matters. Teammates stepping up, spacing on the floor, coaching adjustments, all of these factors play a role. But even within that system, certain plays stand out. For example, there were possessions where Clark drew multiple defenders, then found open teammates with precise passes. These aren't highlight plays just for entertainment, they reflect understanding, vision, timing. And according to some analysts, that's where her long-term impact might be even greater than her scoring. Because when a player can control both scoring and playmaking, defenses are forced to make difficult choices. Now, let's address another layer of this conversation: comparisons and rivalries. It's impossible to talk about the current WNBA landscape without mentioning Angel Reese. The dynamic between Clark and Reese has been a major talking point since their college days. But it's important to approach this carefully. There is competition, yes. There is history, yes. But there's also a tendency, especially online, to oversimplify things into rivalry narratives that don't always reflect reality. In truth, both players bring different strengths to the game. Clark's style leans toward perimeter shooting and playmaking, while Reese is known for rebounding, physical presence, and inside scoring. Comparing them directly can miss the bigger picture. Still, fans are reacting, and that reaction is part of the story. Some fans see Clark's recent performances as proof that she's adjusting faster than expected. Others argue that consistency over time is what really matters. And both perspectives have merit. Because one game, or even a few games, doesn't define a season, but it can signal a trend. Another interesting element here is how opposing teams are adjusting. Reports suggest that defenses are becoming more strategic when facing Clark. Instead of just applying pressure, they're mixing coverages, sometimes trapping, sometimes switching, sometimes giving space. And that's actually a sign of respect. In professional basketball, when teams start designing specific strategies for a player, it means that player is being taken seriously. But it also creates a new challenge. Because once the league adjusts to you, you have to adjust again. And that's where the next phase begins. From an analytical standpoint, what we're seeing is a classic development curve. Phase 1, introduction and hype. Phase 2, adjustment struggles. Phase 3, counter-adjustment. Clark appears to be entering that third phase. And if that's true, it changes expectations. Instead of asking whether she belongs, the conversation becomes about how high her ceiling is and how quickly she can reach it. Now let's talk about fan reactions, because they reveal something deeper about how sports narratives evolve. On one side, you have fans who are excited, seeing these performances as confirmation of her potential. Social media discussions highlight her court vision, shooting range, and growing confidence. On the other side, there are more cautious voices. Some fans point out that the season is long, that defenses will continue to adapt, and that consistency is the real test. And again, both sides are valid. Because sports are unpredictable. A strong performance today doesn't guarantee the same result tomorrow. But it does build momentum. And momentum matters, not just in games, but in perception. Another layer to consider is the broader impact on the league. The WNBA has been growing steadily, but the recent surge in attention is hard to ignore. Games featuring Clark are drawing significant viewership, and that has ripple effects, more exposure for other players, more discussions about the league, and more opportunities for growth. But with that growth comes pressure. Because increased attention also means increased criticism. Every missed shot, every turnover, every defensive lapse becomes part of the conversation. And for a rookie, or any player, that can be challenging. Yet, according to recent discussions, Clark appears to be handling that pressure in a way that suggests maturity. Not perfectly, no player does, but with a level of composure that's notable. There were moments in the game where things didn't go her way. Missed shots. Defensive breakdowns. But instead of forcing plays, she stayed within the flow of the game. That's not always easy, especially for a player known for taking big shots. And it's something that often separates good players from great ones, the ability to adapt without losing identity. Now let's take a deeper look at the implications. If Clark continues on this trajectory, what does it mean? First, it could reshape how teams defend her. Instead of focusing solely on limiting her scoring, they may prioritize disrupting her playmaking. Second, it could influence how her team builds around her, emphasizing spacing, movement, and complementary roles. Third, it could shift media narratives from short-term performance to long-term impact. But there's also a cautionary side, because expectations can rise quickly. And when expectations rise, so does scrutiny. Fans who celebrate today may question tomorrow if performances dip. That's the reality of professional sports. And it's why consistency remains the most important factor. Another key point is physicality. The WNBA is known for its physical style of play, and Clark has already experienced that firsthand. Early in the season, there were moments where defenders tested her, applying pressure both on and off the ball. In this recent performance, Reports suggest she handled that physicality more effectively, using positioning, timing, and awareness to avoid unnecessary contact. That's not just a technical adjustment, it's a mental one. Because dealing with physical defense requires confidence. And confidence often comes from experience. We're also seeing growth in her decision-making under pressure. There were late-game situations where instead of forcing a contested shot, she made the extra pass. In other moments, she recognized mismatches and attacked strategically. These are small details, but they add up. And over time, they define a player's impact. Of course, it's important not to overstate things. One performance, even a strong one, doesn't rewrite an entire season. But it does provide evidence. Evidence of growth. Evidence of adjustment. Evidence that the early challenges are being addressed. And that's why this moment feels significant. Because it's not just about what happened, it's about what it suggests. Looking ahead, the next few games will be crucial. Will this level of performance continue? Will defenses find new ways to challenge her? Will her team continue to support her development? These are open questions. And that's what keeps fans engaged. Because sports, at their core, are about uncertainty. Now let's return to the bigger picture. The conversation around Caitlin Clark isn't just about one player, it's about how narratives are formed. Early hype created high expectations. Early struggles created doubt. Now, moments like this are creating a new perspective. But the story is still being written. And that's important to remember. Because it's easy to jump to conclusions, either positive or negative. But the most accurate analysis comes from observing trends over time. And right now, the trend suggests improvement. Measured, but noticeable. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with a player who is adapting, a league that is responding, and a fanbase that is deeply engaged. And maybe that's the most interesting part. Because beyond stats and highlights, what we're really watching is a process. A process of growth, adjustment, and understanding. And those processes don't happen overnight. They unfold game by game, moment by moment, decision by decision. So the next time you see a headline or a highlight, it's worth asking a deeper question. Is this just a moment? Or is it part of something bigger? Because in the case of Caitlin Clark, it might be both. And that brings us to the final question. If this level of adjustment continues, and if these performances become more consistent, are we watching the early stages of something truly transformative in the WNBA? Or is the league still one step ahead, waiting to challenge her again? That answer isn't clear yet. But one thing is certain. The conversation is far from over.